Hey everyone, this is Sean from Room 9 Podcast. Just wanted to introduce this next coming up episode, which is episode 4, where Andy and I sit down and talk about the benefits of vulnerability, the difficulties of it, and how it can just really help us get to the main roots of our problem in recovery, which is usually, for the most case, ends up being pain. We sit down and just have a nice discussion about it. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you for, once again, listening and supporting us through your social media and everything else that you guys do. It is awesome. We are slowly growing, slowly getting bigger, and we are slowly coming out of this infancy stage of our recovery of our podcast. We're starting to really get the word out there and spread things around, and I hope everybody is really enjoying this. And don't forget to get on YouTube, search Room 9 Podcast, and subscribe. So we will be continuously pumping out episodes. Look for in the future sitting down with more friends and family members of addicts, and so that they can give their story with everything that's going on and how they got to where they are and how they feel with things are going with their loved ones. So thank you very much. Peace out.
All right, I think we're in business.
We are. Give it about a 5-second pause here.
Sip of the old coffee. You know, back in the old days, they used to call me Microphone Fury. That was my battle rap name.
No, they didn't.
That never happened.
No, that didn't. That never happened. All right, room 5. I almost said room 9.
5.
Everybody is back in action once again.
Are we recording already?
We're recording.
Did you get that Microphone Fury thing?
Oh yeah, that's
You're
on
an
there.
asshole for not
I've been
telling me.
recording for almost 2 minutes now.
You're such a piece of
Well,
shit.
now that I'm getting better at some editing skills here, it's easier for me just to chop out a minute and in the beginning, so just kind of keep the flow going.
You should leave that in though,
I'm
because it
going
was
to.
funny.
That's going to get left in.
I'm just
Don't
pretending
worry.
like I want it in there because I know you're going to, and I don't want to give you the satisfaction of you thinking that I don't want it in there.
Oh, I want it in there.
So
it's
good.
going to be in.
Awesome.
That's right. You know it. So, Andy, I told you on the drive over here, I wanted to share something with you. I was going to do it the other day on the phone, but I decided against it, and I figured I'd save it for the opening of this episode of Room 9 on vulnerability, I think is a topic we're going to get into. But
I think it is.
I mean, I guess maybe this is related to vulnerability. But anyway, I found this journal right here from when I started at Horizon Village.
Okay.
And I did the old kind of stop journaling a little bit ways through, but I was reading this with Christine the other day. The first 5 or 6 pages. I'm going to read you some parts of it, okay? This is
Lay
good
it on
stuff.
me.
This is good stuff.
All right.
I'm in the middle of this. This was on July 15th. In the middle of this, I wrote, had a good time talking with Andy. Probably the first good conversation I've had since I've been here. From consciousness, psychoactive substance therapy, imprints, ego walls, and drug decriminalization, it was nice to get some good conversing in.
Wow.
Let's go on to the next day. Ended the night with a good conversation with Andy. It has been the second night in a row I've had great talks with this dude. He is definitely becoming somebody who I will get close with.
That's awesome.
Oh, it keeps going here, buddy.
All right, good. Because once you're done, I got something I want to add to this. I'm just going to put myself out there.
That's good. Good.
We'll let you go for a second.
I'll give you 2 more here. Had a great conversation with Andy again. Where is it? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase this. Great conversation with Angelo and Andy again today. Difference was they both happened at separate times, and then this was the last one. Had several good conversations with Andy today. I love that dude. I have to make it a point to get to know his story next time we talk. I can see he is going to be one of the guys I'm going to get the closest with. We talked about Buddhism, language, thinker, and thoughts. Looking forward to the conversing we will be doing in the future. Huh?
That's some awesome shit. No, I'm just going to say this, and this is going to make me look like such a tool. I remember you had stopped me in the hallway, and we were talking about that. You mentioned that, yeah, kind of like I was been writing in my journal or whatever, and I mentioned, how I really enjoyed our conversation the other day. And me being as insecure as I was at that time, in my head I'm thinking, is this guy fucking with me? What the fuck did I ever do to this guy? Like, why is he doing this? And I'm brushing my teeth, because that's what it was. I was heading into the bathroom to brush my teeth for the night, and it was just running through my mind. I'm just like, what is this guy's problem? Why is he fucking with my head like this?
Everybody's out to get me.
Everybody's out to get me, dude. Oh my God, it's so good to not have that thought process anymore and not be so defensive and insecure and just riddled with fear on everything. And it's crazy because this is going to kind of get into the topic that we're going to discuss, is that to overcome that fear, maybe not, okay, I'm not going to say overcome that fear, but to have that fear subside took a certain level of vulnerability, and to kind of let my guard down, let these walls down, and start accepting that, in spite of my past and the person that I've been, I can be liked by people. And that's something that I lost that idea. I completely disowned the idea that somebody could actually enjoy my company. Somebody like me, somebody who's done all these what I consider horrendous things, a lifetime of crime, dishonesty, disloyalty, unfaithful in whatever how many relationships, and then just a savage drug addict, homeless at times, just this wretched life. I lost any sort of self-worth, you know what I mean? Any kind of idea that I have any kind of value, because you keep going down that road, and I felt like a piece of shit, and I believed that I was. So what an amazing experience to be able to come out of that. And now I'm only a couple months into my sobriety, and already those things are subsiding, and that came from becoming vulnerable. And I wasn't willing to become, let me backpedal a little bit there. That vulnerability came from a point of willingness, and that willingness came from just being completely defeated and beaten down, and just, I can't bear to live like that anymore. This goes back to the detox story, the reflection. I always talk about this, and that was my little window. I was at a meeting yesterday, and a guy was actually talking about that window of opportunity that as alcoholics and drug addicts, we only get this tiny little fucking window where we're desperate enough to be willing to change, and now this is just my opinion. I think that window is so small because as addicts and alcoholics and people who've experienced all the things that we've experienced, we've become incredibly tough people. Like, drug addicts are hard as fuck, dude. We are tough people because we've withstood so many things. Like, we've gone through some horrendous shit. 99% of it self-inflicted. But as a result of that, our skin got real, real tough. So that window of opportunity where we're feeling that extreme pain, which makes us willing to change, that pain's going to heal real quick because we're as tough as we are. So if we don't dive in, and most of the time, I'm sure we don't even realize that that's our window. We just look at it, well, at least I did. I looked at it as just such a low point, but really that wasn't a low point. That was my fucking in. That was like the draft, you know what I mean? And I'm the number one pick. And I just didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, like how fucking lucky I am to be as beaten down as I was at that point, to be willing to just whatever it takes. And if that takes walking into the fears and staring insecurity in the face and just like, okay, whatever, because I had no fight left, and as that kind of progressed and I went through detox and made it out to Horizon Village, I started to see the value of the vulnerability, because this is not, when you go to cure, let's say you have a tumor inside you or whatever, you don't really need to be vulnerable for that to be removed. The doctor can, with a knife, cut you open. Now the opening is there to remove that cancer or whatever, is inside you that needs to come out, but we have to cut it open. We have to be the ones that are opening it up, and that's a terrifying thing.
Because nobody else can.
Nobody else can open us up. They're more than willing to offer solutions and help, and like, dude, this is how you do it. All you have to do on your side of the table is be willing, and that willingness has to come through vulnerability. And that's a terrifying thing, again, because, being a drug addict, and I can't speak for anybody else, but the situations that I've been in and the places I've been in, these are terrifying things where you can't show, what I thought weakness. You can't be surrounded by gangsters and drug dealers and guns and shit and be vulnerable. You know what I mean? It's a matter of survival. So conditioned to like buck vulnerability and push it away and pretend like it's not even an option, that's going to close any door of opportunity to change. So to have the opportunity, and it's almost really not through any of my own doing, it just happened to line up that way. And to me, that's God working in my life. And I just started to see how much freer I felt the more vulnerable I became. And this kind of ties into the steps. I know you just started your 4th step. And the 4th step, it's worded like we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And I think that that's a good way to word it because it gets the step going. But what I got out of it was, we write down all these resentments, but then when we start to look at our role in those situations, that's where the vulnerability comes in. Because I have to find how I was selfish in a situation where previously to doing this step, I'm just looking at it as like this person fucked me, or they stole from me, or they hurt me in some way. So it was a trespass against me. What role could I have played? So looking, that's when the digging really started, and you start to see these core character defects, the selfishness, the manipulation, the jealousy, and essentially just hatred, when it's all driven by fear. So yeah, I think the real cornerstone in any recovery is vulnerability.
Vulnerability. Yeah, you mentioned fear. And I feel like, every human being as an individual, what we all truly want is connection. To feel a real connection, you have to be vulnerable. And it's very scary to be vulnerable. I mean, super scary. I feel like people end up not wanting to be vulnerable because out of the fear of, what is this person going to think of me? I want this connection with this person, but I'm scared to do this or say this or tell this to somebody about me because what if they don't want to be around me? What if they don't like me? What if they think it's crazy or weird, gross, disgusting, whatever it is that you're trying to be open with? And because of this, because of this fear, it's such a paradox, I feel, because there's this, I want to be connected. I want to be real. I want to be authentic. But then we get fearful that if we are real, we are authentic, then I'm not going to be connected with anybody. And so we have our minds telling us one thing and our hearts, for lack of a better term, telling us another thing. And I mean, that's what we all want. I don't think you come across one person who doesn't want connection. And in order to be, connected, if you're not open about everything you're always hiding something. When you lay your head down at night, there's going to be this weight of you like, oh, I'm not getting this. I'm not doing this. I'm not feeling it in the right way. And it kind of brings me back around to like thinking how a lot in like our society, and it's not only men, but I like using men because I feel like, women can express more of their emotions than, men are allowed to. But in general, really, it's just people in general not wanting to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. But you can't work on anything, truly work on anything, and without being vulnerable, without talking about everything. And I think that's why there's such a high rate of, relapses. It's always been kind of one of my biggest theories is why there's such a high percent of relapse, and it's because you don't really get to the roots of anything. And you don't get to the roots of anything because it's up to the individual, no matter who you're with, no matter who you're talking with, no matter who your counselor is, no matter what rehab you're at. It's up to the individual to get to these roots, to be 100% open and want to talk about things. Mm-hmm. And it's super difficult. And it kind of, it swings me back to the word confidence. Like you need to have confidence in your weaknesses, in yourself, so much that you're not afraid to expose your weaknesses. I guess that's better said.
I see what you mean. I don't know if I would phrase it with confidence. It's more of an acceptance. Because
a sense of self-worth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like I'm not terrific with words. I'm not a dictionary, and I could barely fucking read and write. Anyways, but like when you're talking about connection, like you're right. It's like a primal instinct to have connections with other human beings in our lives, and in order to develop a true, deep-seated connection, we need to be our raw self. You know what I mean? How can somebody connect to us if we're not our raw, authentic self? And we prevent that from being seen when we hold shit back, when we prevent ourselves from being vulnerable. But you're right, that's a scary thing because I don't know about you, but one of my biggest fears is a fear of rejection. So be it a friendship or a relationship or something like that, you know what I mean? If you really like let's say I really like a girl And, and I'm thinking about it, and I start building her up in my head. I kind of put her up on a pedestal, like she's beautiful, she's smart, she's funny, everybody likes her or whatever, right? And she's just like an amazing human being. And then you start to, I start to like kind of develop some insecurities. It's like, well, fuck, man, like I really want to go and start a conversation with her. And, from the outside looking in, here, I'll use this as an example. I'm not going to say any names because you never know who's going to hear this. But I think it was last week, me and you and Patrick were leaving a meeting. And there's a girl I'd seen there like 2 or 3 times or whatever. And I think she's fantastic, right? She's pretty and she's funny and you know what I mean? She's just a cool chick. And I've never really held a conversation. Actually, not really. No, I've never held a conversation with her. And here I am, 36 years old. We all get back in the car and I'm just like, guys, I got to talk to you about something. And here's where vulnerability became like a beautiful thing because I'm so comfortable with you two. You know what I mean? You and Patrick, I fucking love you guys. And I tell you my situation. It's like, dude, this is weird. Like, I'm a grown up. I shouldn't be insecure like this. But I like this girl and I can't fucking think of anything to say. And these two kind of like looked at each other and giggled a little bit. And now like I got a pit in my stomach. Like, fuck, they're going to make fun of me. And I don't know if it was you or Patrick, but one of you turned around and you were like, how about you try hello? And I'm like, fuck, fuck the both of you. And it's like, it's true, man. You know what I mean? Like I psych myself out and so afraid of rejection. And even if you do get shot down, I'm sure this human being isn't going to look at me and like punch me in the face for saying hello. Like even if it doesn't go good and we don't have a connection or she doesn't find me attractive, whatever the case may be, like that's worst case scenario is you get a fucking no. Or it's just like, oh, I'm not single or whatever. But I just developed this I shouldn't say develop, but I feed this fear of rejection so much to where like I can't even come up with a word as simple as hello. You know what I mean? And it's, it's one of the beautiful things about going through this process. Like, as you know, I'm on my 9th step now, which is the making amends. And as I'm going through this process, I guess you could use the word confidence. Like I'm starting to gain confidence and accepting myself for who I am, that I'm flawed. I'm not a bad guy. I've done some bad things as a result of whatever scenarios, drugs and just, social circumstances and life experiences. You know what I mean? I became this person. And now those layers are starting to get pulled off. Last weekend, I went down to Schenectady for a big book workshop. And I ended up talking to this guy, and we're talking about like doing the steps and this and that. And it was a cool setting, man. We're sitting around this campfire. Everyone's smoking cigars. It was like up in the hills. It was beautiful. And one of the things I said to him is like, I kind of have this fear of becoming somebody that I don't know, and there's parts of myself that I don't really want to lose. You know what I mean? Like I like my goofiness, my joking around. I like my work ethic. There's a couple other characteristics that I really like about myself. But there's a lot of shit that I want to get rid of. And so I said to this guy, like, I'm afraid that, I'm going to develop into somebody that I don't like. I don't want to just be some puddle, mushy, super spiritual, fucking meditating all the time. Like, I don't even know what it might be, but I have this fear of changing into something that I'm not going to recognize. And the guy says to me like this, and this is a very religious guy. He's spiritual and he's a Christian. And he says, look at it like this, man. Like when you were born, God gave you a personality. All these defects that you have now is shit that you piled on over the years. So what's going to happen as a result of these steps is those layers are going to come off. God didn't make you jealous. God didn't make you angry and resentful and fucking manipulative and misleading and dishonest and a thief and all these things. That's shit that you acquired on your own. So as a result of doing these steps, those layers are going to be pulled off and those defects are going to be pulled out. So what you're going to be left with is actually you. You're not going to become somebody you don't know. You're going to become the best version of your fucking self. And then that's going to be somebody that people do want to be around. And that fear of rejection and stuff is going to slip away, not because you're going to hit a home run in every conversation that you have with whoever and that everybody's going to like you. That's not, the thing he was driving at. But he's saying, once you're your own authentic self, rejection's not going to be a big deal. It's just going to be, okay, well, I just didn't click with that person. But you came into that interaction with love in your heart and compassion and niceness and kindness. So if it just doesn't go anywhere, then that's okay because you weren't doing anything out of like some sort of like scheme or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not like you got caught stealing. It's just you were doing something nice and loving and trying to connect with somebody. And if the connection didn't happen, then it's not that big of a deal. And so it's funny that you get this, what seems to me like a huge strength and confidence and sureness in yourself by first becoming incredibly vulnerable and exposing all these fears and things that you hate about yourself or you feel really bad about yourself, embarrassed about, you know what I mean? There might be some circumstances in your life that you don't want anybody else to know about. You did something you're ashamed of, or something happened to you that you're ashamed of, whatever the case may be. And like when you do your fifth step, you talk about all these things, all these defects. And then what my sponsor did with me, and maybe each sponsor does it differently, but in the notebook where I wrote out my fourth step, the very first page, he wrote across the top things I'm going to take to the grave with me. And I left that page blank. I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to say it again. I left that page blank out of fear that, like, if I write this shit down, the stuff that I actually plan on taking to the grave with me, because I asked him, I was like, so, like, when I write it down, do I, like, just go and, like, burn it or something like that? And I'm, like, free of these things? And he was like, no, you fucking keep it. And I'm just like, I just agreed because I didn't want to have the discussion.
Yeah.
But I was not going to write it down because, well, what if somebody found it? Can't say this shit to anybody. But in doing my fifth step, just before we started number 6, he's asking me, like, is there anything that was left out? And so I'm being told that once I do this, I'm going to be able to walk life fearless because I'm walking with God and God's managing everything for me. And so that booming voice in my head that I always talk about is like, dude, if you're really fearless,
you forgot something.
Why are you afraid? I didn't forget them. They were fucking front of my brain.
Put it down, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, you know, this voice in my head, if you're really fearless right now, why can't you say this to this human power, just a human being in front of me? And I'm thinking to myself, well, is it a fear of judgment, or is it just? I guess yeah, it was just a fear of judgment. What's this cat gonna think of me if I say this shit? And just like literally the
disconnection.
Yeah, fear of disconnection. Right at we'll call it the 11th hour, man. We're just about to move past it, and I put my hand up. It was only me and him in the room, but I fucking put my hand up because I couldn't make words, man. And I was just like, fuck. So I tell him like the last couple things, dude. He cheered for me. He was like, fuck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like he was pumped for me, and like, dude, I got this like weird, like, I don't know. It's almost like the first time you kiss a girl. You know what I mean? Not in life, but like when you like somebody, and it's like, you know, on your first date and you're holding hands and that first kiss, how you get those like little tingly, light, cold feeling under your skin or whatever. That's what it felt like, man. It was like, holy fuck. Like, I'm okay that I just told him this, and I'm not just okay because I wasn't rejected, but I'm okay because, oh my God, I got that shit out of my heart.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And I am putting my trust in this power bigger than me.
You're like, it's so funny how, you know, okay, if I do this, I'll feel better, but you still don't want to do it. You still don't want to talk about it. No, I don't. I'm just going to hold it and keep the weight on me, and just, I'm not going to be open. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to be honest in this case, just because I don't know. What if, there's no connection? What if this breaks my connection with this person? Like, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, I can't see the outcome.
A big mountain when it's an anthill, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And it's cool because, like, as I'm going through this, like, it's not every day is better than the last. Well, I guess, okay, I'm trying to think of the right way to word this. Each day is better than the last because it's another day of growth. You know what I mean? But it might not be what I expect or, want. Like that each day I'm just going to become more and more calm and confident and secure and feeling great about everything that's going on in life. That's not the case. But what's happening is that I am picking up momentum with this vulnerability thing. You know what I mean? I'm becoming more comfortable, sharing feelings with people, sharing how I think with people. You know what I mean? Or like, saying a joke and nobody laughs at it, it's like, well, fuck, I thought it was going to be funny, and not feeling like totally defeated and like, oh, you're such a loser, nobody laughs at your jokes, and it's like, it wasn't even your joke, you saw it on Instagram, and then you tried to fucking pirate that shit and make it like you came up with it so people are going to accept you. Like, I'm just becoming more okay with things, you know what I mean? Like, as our friendship develops and stuff, to tell you, like, I fucking love you and I love spending time with you and stuff like that, like, that's something 6 months ago I wouldn't have had the confidence to say to somebody, even if we did have like a relationship that was building in a positive way. And so what ends up happening is that relationship is going to fucking fizzle and die because those, you know what I mean? That connection's not being fed. And the way a connection gets fed is through vulnerability and exposing myself more of who I am. You know what I mean? And making myself more open to this person who I appreciate the relationship with. And like, that's what feeds it, I think. You know what I mean? Because it shows that other person too, like how comfortable you are with them. And that's going to make that, I think, make that other person feel good that you feel that comfortable with them, and then they're going to share more with you, and it's just going to fucking blossom that way.
It just keeps going.
Yeah, and it's not like a physical thing where like you can like buy the friendship or whatever, you know what I mean? Like you literally, it's from inside. It's you, it's your soul, it's, you know, how you feel about things, and like admitting when you're sad about something or bummed out or insecure about something, you know what I mean? Like it's crazy. Like I picked up this, I don't know if I should say this, but because of the whole DSS thing. But anyways, I picked up this little job, and I think I told you about it, the parking lot thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so when I got this, it's like not a bad paying thing, and it's literally standing at parking lots during events, and you're fucking waving people in. And so I know it's a positive thing, it's a humble thing, and it's a great way to start getting back in the swing of life. But when I walked out of that office after getting the job, I'm like, fuck, man, I can't tell anybody about this. Like here, I thought I've had jobs where like it was like cool. I worked in a fancy restaurant, or I was an iron worker, or I was an electrician, and like these are things I like would sit in a bar and be proud to tell people. Like, I'm a fucking iron worker. I build buildings. You know what I mean? And like that's a cool, admirable thing. But here now, I'm going to be a fucking parking lot attendant, and I'm like, I have to lie to my friends now. I just tell them I'm not working. You know what I mean? I'd rather tell people I'm unemployed
I'm not working.
than tell them that I'm doing this job that I think is not admirable. Dude, what the fuck? Okay, number one, that's horseshit, because if you're productive, and that's what matters. That's the definition, in my opinion, of a man, is you're doing what you can to contribute to society and provide for yourself. And what's more is that now that I've made myself vulnerable in these friendships and relationships that I'm developing since I've gotten sober, is that I'm comfortable telling people, like, you know what I mean? And it was cool to see that, where like my instinct right away was like, nah, I can't tell anybody because this shit's embarrassing. But then, you know, my heart was like, yes, you can. You're doing well. You're going, and that's like just God speaking to me through prayer or whatever. And it was such a relief. It's like, whoa, I don't have to lie about this or really most anything. Well, you don't have to lie about anything, but I still find myself lying. It's a hard habit to break. I was actually,
even when you don't have to.
When you don't have to, dude. I was talking to a friend up in Canada not long ago. And like he's stoked I'm going through the process I'm going through, and, you know, getting better and stuff. And we make jokes about drugs and booze and whatever. And I was talking about, you know, like the changes of becoming, you know, honest and open and all that. And I'm just like, dude, like this shit is hard, man. And I said, Chris, like, yo, try to go a whole day without lying. And his response was, yeah, dude, it's really not that hard. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, just lying is like it's not even second nature. It was first nature.
Yeah.
Because if I just tell a lie that's going to keep everything, you know, good at that moment, and then I can assess later on whether or not I need to tell the truth, because it's like that's like my padding. You know, I'll just tell you something sweet, whether it's the truth or not, and then
sometimes it's about something you don't even like.
Don't have to lie about. Yeah,
like it doesn't even matter.
Right?
Do you like this song? Yeah, I love this song.
And it's okay to be like, no, I don't care for that song. And it's okay. Like, what's going to happen? The fucking people are going to burst into flames because you don't like some shitty music that this doofus likes? Whatever. Anyways.
There's something I feel that ends up being so beautiful about it. I think it's such a beautiful thing, our flaws, and being vulnerable and being open and discussing the things that I don't want to discuss. And we feel like there's so much like shame that comes with it, almost like we're almost ashamed of it. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to talk about it. But yeah, it's just, there's so much beauty. And addiction, I feel, a lot of addiction anyway, is something that people do to numb this vulnerability, to be open,
right,
to be honest about these flaws that we have, and I don't want to deal with it. Or even, even being vulnerable, not only your flaws, I guess I'm making it sound like vulnerability is just talking about your flaws, but even, painful things that's happened to you. My brother and sister dying, just all these things that have happened, and to be open and to talk about these things and be vulnerable with these things is beautiful. I think it's a beautiful thing. And we become so ashamed of these things that, oh no, we're gonna stay away from it. And it comes up. The problem is when you start numbing these things, you're also numbing like joy and happiness, and we can't selectively numb emotions.
You can't pick and choose.
No,
it's all or nothing.
If you're numbing the negative ones, you're going to numb the positive ones.
Right.
And that's why I feel like that self-worth is so important, to know, okay, I made these mistakes, but I still deserve to be forgiven. I still deserve to be loved. I still deserve to be accepted. And so I'm just going to say these things. I'm going to get over it. And all of a sudden this magical thing starts happening where you start feeling better about them. You start getting that more sense of confidence or self-worth. And all of a sudden you're becoming more vulnerable with all these people all around. And I remember when I first started, I was actually married when I first kind of discovered this vulnerability thing with married to Michelle. And so this whole time, you know, we were together. She's had this young 20s drinker yelling at the TV, typical Buffalo Bills sports fan, like, come on, you should have made it first down there. You know, like, you know, that's what it consisted of. We never talked about anything really. If there was problems, we would just, you know, ignore them until we both got over it, and we'd come back and do our thing. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you know, towards the end of our relationship, all of a sudden now I don't want to watch the Bills game. I want to talk about shit, you know. I want to talk about things that I'm terrible at. Can you help me fix them? You know, I tried to develop this friendship between us. Mm-hmm. It was too late, honestly. Like, I remember she just shut down. It's like she had no idea how to deal with vulnerability. Right. All the men in her life that have ever been a part of her life and that were still a part of her life were not like that. Mm-hmm. They didn't talk about anything. And all of a sudden, this is thrown in her face, and she just put up walls, man. That was really started when our relationship really went down. It was kind of like plateaued at a level of just going through the motions of, you know, what a marriage is that you see so many other relationships are. And then all of a sudden, all right, now I want to talk about life. I want to talk about things that I want to fix in myself. And it just went so downhill. And I think that's probably why I've had walls up and had to get back into vulnerability again, because it was almost like, damn, I just kind of threw all this out at your feet, and you just were like, no, I'm not touching that.
Yeah, one thing I want to say real quick, because I think you make a really good point when you're talking about, you know, how later on, like down the road, you try to like establish that vulnerability and kind of build a connection there. It is one of those things that kind of like, I think it has to be done in the beginning, because as you start to callous up a little bit, you're going to get to a point where it's like kind of point of no return.
Too little, too late.
Too little, too late. So like in the beginning of relationships, remember how I was just saying about like, you know, I'll tell a lie initially and then just kind of feel it out after and see which way I'm going to go with it. Yeah. That's one of those things, man. By telling that lie right away, I'm just putting a fucking roadblock on that connection. You know what I mean? So we can, and now at the risk, you don't want to overshare either. Like, you know, we talk about, there's a time and a place, you know what I mean? If somebody's going to talk about, you know, like a sexual abuse or some really deep family issue or something like that's something that you're not going to want to talk to somebody on the bus about. Just some cat.
Put a pin in that for 1 second. I gotta.
Yeah. What do you got?
It's interesting too that.
Put a pin in it.
Sorry, I stole your line. Yeah. It's interesting that people can, like, you've heard people who just pour their heart out to you. Like, there's almost a sense of false vulnerability. Somebody like pouring their life out to you, but yet you can tell they've never actually dealt with this.
No, and I think that's an overcompensation at that point. They probably had it in them for so long, and they're kind of going nuts, and anxiety's, you know, overriddled with anxiety, trying to figure out how to deal with it. So I'm just going to start, you know, they say talk about your problems, and that's how you can work through them. So now they're just talking way too fucking much into the wrong audience.
It's like emptiness, too.
You know, some things you got to talk to your like good buddies about. Other things are like great for a therapist or a sponsor. And, you know, small talk on the bus is one thing, but don't start telling this motherfucker about, you know, Uncle Samson that day in the woodshed or whatever, because it's just not going to fucking help you out a lot.
Laughing about
no, it's not. I'm not.
Sorry.
I'm laughing about the name Samson, that's what I came up with. Fucking whatever. But yeah, so I mean, yes, you have to establish connection early on, or, you know what I mean? And to feed that connection, you have to be vulnerable. But yeah, it's important to not overshare in an inappropriate setting. You know what I mean? If you are meeting a girl's parents for the first time, maybe don't
talk about that woodshed.
Right. Well, or you know what I mean? If I, you know, ever find a nice girl, whatever, you know, and I go over and my opener's not probably going to be like, so I smoked crack for 20 years. How about them bills? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Not a good opener.
No. And it's like, you can lean into that, you know, maybe when, you know, her dad starts to kind of buddy up with you and he likes you a little bit. He's like, hey, man, do you want a beer? And it's like, oh, no, you know, I'm good. I don't drink. And then maybe that could be well, why? Well, I'm in recovery. You know, I had a problem with alcohol. And I find that that's always like the easiest way to start opening up about my recovery. Because everybody, it's like, you know, knows somebody who drank too much. Or no, I'm just saying like to talk about the alcohol side first. To not use like heroin or crack or meth as your fucking opener. Because, I mean, that might shock people. Because most normal people, the word meth is like a shocking word. To me, it's like the punchline of a joke, right? Because it's like I've fucking hidden bushes smoking meth, fucking trying to avoid the birds, right? Like whatever. But yeah, so it's like, somebody offers you a beer and you can be like, I don't drink. And now that's like the opener into like, oh, well, I respect that. Like, how come? And well, it started to affect my life, or however you want to word it. And then, as you build a relationship and they start to see who you are for who you are, because you're being open and honest and vulnerable with these people, so they can see that you are a good soul. Now when the crack and that kind of shit starts to come up in conversation as that relationship builds, it's not going to be so, it may be shocking, but it's not really going to rattle them, because they're like, wow, like this guy, you used to smoke crack? I never would have thought. Like, dude, that's one of the fucking coolest things that people say to me now. Like, when I'll be talking to somebody and somehow that comes up in a conversation and they look at me and they're like, you were what? I never would have known. Dude, you know how good that makes me feel? Like, holy fuck, that means I'm doing the right thing for the right reason and I'm moving in a good direction. And I never want to let go of that.
It's a beautiful thing. You and your mic drops over there.
It's just fucking disease. I can't help it.
It's a disease.
Anytime I say something I think is cool, I really got to stop that, because it hasn't been funny since like 2007.
Too bad people can't see it. One day we'll get there where we have video.
Yeah.
People can see your virtual mic drop.
My virtual
over
mic drop.
Over the air mic drop.
Oh, yeah. Dig.
Kind of going back to like numbing the emotions. The negative emotions anyway, the negative feelings through vulnerability. Because by all means, like, vulnerability is not, I've never heard anybody say it's comfortable. There's certainly not much comfort.
I kind of disagree, but I'm going to let you go for a second.
In being open and vulnerable. I mean, maybe it can produce comfort, but as you're in the middle of it, I don't think it's ever really like, oh, this is awesome. This is great, talking about the things that I'm terrible at. I think the after effect it produces a good feeling of comfort and, wow, I'm glad I did that after it's done. But in the middle of it, I don't think it's there. And as we try to numb these things, and as soon as you start numbing, you get your disc, there's no connection anymore. There's no nothing. Yeah. And then you go back to using it again to try to, numb that. And so it's this constant cycle.
It's a hamster wheel.
Avoiding vulnerability, avoiding, speaking about things and talking about things. That was the number one thing I've seen in the rehabs, is you can see so many people, like, you got to dig.
Right.
When I was out at my first 28-day program after jail, Blaisdell ATC, out in Orangeburg, New York, I remember talking to this kid. He was probably in his mid-20s, and he had a TBI, super angry dude. But I knew there was a lot there, and I talked to him for 45 minutes before I could get him to even mention anything about his father. And it was just constant, all right, I got to go in and, all right, try to navigate my way through so he doesn't think I'm just coming right at it and trying to figure it out. So I sat there with him for 45 minutes and finally got him to say about how his father was never around, pretty much. But it took like a while to get him into this, comfort zone of, all right, I can bring this stuff up now. I can say this to him. It's so much work to get people to talk about it, because people don't want to talk about it. And going back to what my point is I see in the rehabs that nobody wants to talk about things. So you have this very little time with your counselor, really, if you're lucky, an hour a week, for even 3.5 months. What is that? 8, 9, 10, maybe 10 times you meet with your counselor, your whole trip. That's if, some people are out of there quicker. If you're not willing to be open and vulnerable, you really aren't going to get much work done. There's not going to be much taken care of. There's not going to be much that's going to get fixed, and hence why relapse is so high. I mean, so that's high. There's a lot of reasons for it, I believe.
But I think that's a main factor.
A big one, because people don't want to go in and be open and vulnerable. We're ashamed of the things we do. I'm completely ashamed of the things I did to get high.
Yeah.
Towards the end when I was getting dope sick. I mean, it was just terrible.
Right.
The people who loved and supported me, the things I would do to them, the lies I would come up with, the things I would steal from them, blatantly steal, knowing I'm going to get caught.
Yeah.
Knowing they know it's going to be me. And in order, to talk about that really sucks. I mean, I think this podcast is a huge thing for us, at least for me. I guess I'll keep it on the eye. But because I can just sit here, I mean, how many people are,
I don't know why it was
how many people are going to be listening to this? And not that we're some huge podcast right now, but
right,
I mean,
but people are going to hear it. People are going to hear it. Yeah, they're going to hear the things that we say, and you're right. It's funny, like you talk about the things like towards the end of it, and like I don't talk a lot about it, but like the worst the thing that made me feel the worst out of anything I've done in addiction, and if you look at this from just like a criminal code aspect, this is like minor league. But I had my grandma's bank card, and she wanted me to run to the ATM for her and get some money out. And I fucking never came back, man. And I spent like, this is not funny, you piece of shit. But anyways, I guess we can't laugh at ourselves, whatever. But see, this is a benefit of being vulnerable now because we're as comfortable as we are with each other. I'm not going to get knotted up and what the fuck you laughing at, you know what I mean? Because we're fucking bros. Anyways, so thinking about that, and it's like there was no hiding the fact that I was the one taking out the money, not just that time, but then an hour later and an hour later, because I was smoking crack, and that is a fucking nonstop revolving, you know what I mean, bank machine transact. That was whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
you're constantly just hitting the ATM because it's like I'm just gonna do 40 and that's it, and then fucking 10 minutes.
Revolving.
Yeah.
Coffee,
all right.
cafe,
All right.
Bank machine.
Yes. Okay. Whatever. I'm fucking a doofus sometimes. Whatever. But anyways, what I want to backtrack a little bit. So when we were talking about vulnerability just now, and you're saying like how it can be uncomfortable, and I after you finished your point, I see where you were going with that. But I think you're right. The initial vulnerability can be maybe not uncomfortable all the time, but at least kind of scary. And then eventually, yes, the vulnerability does start to feel good. And not just in the sense that like, wow, okay, I got that off my chest, but just, you know, when you talk about like people who are deeply in love and like laying in bed together, naked, completely exposed and just like so vulnerable, and it just feels so fucking good and so pure and beautiful and peaceful. That's what I was meaning about like how vulnerability can feel good. But I see what you mean. At first, sometimes it's kind of like ripping off a fucking Band-Aid. You know what I mean? You're going to get some air under there, but at first it kind of hurts, you know, and a few hairs may come with it. So it's not always comfortable. It's a weird analogy, but maybe you're right. Maybe my analogies are not as sweet as I think they are.
It's taking you this long to agree with me on that.
I'm not going to agree. I said maybe. You're
maybe.
Right. There's an inkling
Basically,
of possibility.
That means you agree with me.
Right. Don't fucking whatever. But yeah, man. So it's, I guess like the point that I'm really trying to get across is like if anybody who's like just either still in it or like just, you know, wrestling with it, and it's like, okay, how about this for an example? So my home group had this big potluck dinner last Friday. It was like kind of like a Thanksgiving type deal. It was a ton of food, and a bunch of guys came out from the village. And there were some guys that came that we were in there with. That, you know, like in our last month there, they kind of came in, so we formed some relationships. And now the village has made some changes. It used to be co-ed. There was 25 men, 25 women, and they built another facility that's going to be just for women. So October 1st, they moved all the women out. And I see the value in that, you know what I mean? Because addiction does different things to different people. And in order for women to heal, it probably helps to not have men around, because in addiction, you know what I mean? A lot of the men they encountered were probably fucking predators. And so it's hard for them to open up and heal. But I'm just speculating now, but I get why they did it.
Yeah.
But so I was talking to a buddy, and he was, you know, this past Friday, and he was talking about how different it is. And the value of having those women around, I guess it kind of like, I can't think of the word, but it softened up some of the guys. You know what I mean? Having a female presence, it wasn't like being in a fucking cell block where everything is just like, you know, muscles always on flex, just like a fucking dick measuring contest is actually how this guy, you know, worded it. You know, they got these big groups with a bunch of dudes who were fucking, you know, fresh off the streets. Some of them just came from prisons. And this counselor trying to facilitate something where like emotions can be talked about and feelings and this and that, and like, you know, and it's like, I think he used the example, they were doing a Planned Parenthood group, and it was talking about like, you know, like when you lose your virginity or whatever, and like people, well, I lost it at 12, and you know, you're 16, you're fucking late bloomer, huh? And it's like, was that necessary in that conversation? And they're just putting up roadblocks because of that, like that thick skin. You know what I mean? So it's like we prevent ourselves from taking that risk. And I don't blame anybody who's sitting in that room to not open up about something that may have happened for them. You know what I mean? Because it's like, now I got all these dudes that I got to live with for 3 months, you know? So it's a hard thing, but that's where the willingness has to like be fucking constant, man. Like, how bad do you want this? Recovery is 100% possible. You don't ever have to use again, but we do because we lose our willingness. That's just what I think. You know what I mean? We lose our willingness to continue on this sometime arduous process. Arduous? Did I say that? Yeah, I think I said that right. Anyways, you know what I mean? Sometimes it gets very, very uncomfortable, and I would tap out. I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm fucking lonely. I don't feel good. I'm unhappy with everything. I need to escape. You know what I mean? So I would tap out, you know, because the willingness dissipated. And now it's funny when you were talking about, you know, we did get a 1 hour session per week, one-on-one with our counselors, our therapists there. But that just wasn't enough for me. And my counselor, being the fucking amazing human being that she was.
Shout out Tabby V.
Shout out to Tabitha. I would sometimes, I don't know if I ever told her this, but I could see her door from the cafeteria. So I would sit at the table with my cup of coffee, and as soon as her door would open, I would fucking beeline for it. And I would just, she would see me come in. She was like, "What's up?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't fucking know. Like, is it cool if I close the door?" She was like, "Yes, Andy, close the door." And towards the end of it, at like the last 3-4 weeks, it was like 5-6 hours a week. And like this poor woman, I know she ended up doing
Should
overtime.
Be doing that. That's good. I probably should have done that more.
But I mean, like, I know she ended up doing overtime and stuff like that, having to do the paperwork that she would have been doing had I not been in her office. But she was just fucking amazing with it. And for whatever reason, you know what I mean? That window of opportunity, when I developed that willingness, it just stayed fucking open, man. And I'm sure a lot of it came from me and my willingness, but a lot of it, that was just God working in my life, saying like, okay, he's finally done. And you know what I mean? And I was just fighting for it, man, fucking tooth and nail. Like, my life was becoming worth living again. You know what I mean? It started to mean something to me. And I saw that, like, I can get out of this, and I'm going to fucking do whatever I have to do. You know, and that's like, there's some miracles took place in that office, man. You know what I mean? The first time I sat down with her, she told me about this a couple months later. When I first came in, she was, as I was talking, she was thinking in her head, like, this is one angry dude. How am I going to do anything with this guy in the next 3 months? And, you know, she never mentioned the word like helpless or hopeless, but she was kind of hinting at like, this is just not going to go well. Because, I mean, our first thing, it was like already, I'd been there like 2 days, and I'd already had, I think it was 2 or 3 run-ins with staff. And she's like, well, you know, how do you think this can be handled? And I'm like, well, I'm just going to fucking avoid them, or I'm going to fucking bash them, one or the other, you know? And I was like, oh, probably shouldn't have said that, because, you know, violence against staff. Like, I didn't mean it. She's like, I know you didn't mean it, and blah, blah, blah. And somehow a connection just developed through no doing of my own. This was another God thing for me. Within like 15 minutes of us sitting there, because I tried to walk out. I was like, okay, like, I'm good. And she was like, well, we got like 45 minutes left, bro, so we got to talk about something. And about 10, 15 minutes after that, she's handing me a box of tissues because I'm crying my eyes out talking about childhood shit. And it opened up the floodgates of just like, I wasn't necessarily comfortable yet, but I'm like, I gotta do this. It's like running through a burning doorway to get out of a burning building. Like, you gotta run towards the fucking flames, and you know what I mean, to get to that nice cool air. And so that's kind of what it was like for me. That was a fucking rad analogy. Shut up, Sean. So anyways, you know, and so now that, just because that level of comfort started to develop, is I began to rely on her so much to sort through like everything, you know what I mean? And it was good, you know, like, she never was unwelcoming or said like, you know, not now or anything like that. She helped me through so much. But then she also had like this, I guess, the awareness to let me know, like, in my last 2 weeks when I'd be coming in, she'd be like, you know, like, you're going to be leaving here soon, and you're not going to have access to a therapist fucking 6 days a week or whatever her work schedule.
Always going to be here for you.
Right. Even though like we still communicate through emails, and she's still like super fucking encouraging, man, and like this, she's a great person. And you know, so it's just like, that was my, I guess you could say, homecoming, man. Like, that was my homecoming to fucking living on Earth as a human being that can be a part of fucking civilization, not this more or less alien, because I was completely alienated from society doing what I was doing, and it was cold and fucking dark and lonely, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I had to run towards these flames in order to get out into this nice cool air. So yeah, if anybody's like on the fence or like just not really willing, you know what I mean, just showing up to fucking meetings and stuff, like, it's not going to do anything, man. Walking through those doors is not going to save you. That's like, okay, well, I've got a fucking gym membership, and I go 7 days a week. I walk around, I look at the equipment, I look at the other people who got big muscles, they're fit, they're eating well, and, you know, I'm still out of shape because I haven't fucking done any of the work. Oh, the gym doesn't work. You're an idiot. If you go to a 12-step program and you don't do the 12 steps, how can you fucking say that AA or NA or whatever doesn't work? It's you're an idiot. I'm sorry.
You're one for 4 on analogies right there. That was a good one.
But yeah, man, so it's like, and I've never done the steps before. I've never done them. This is my first time doing them. I went to my first AA meeting 19 years ago. always for the wrong reasons. It was always girlfriends just about to walk out the door because they're sick of my shit. I was like, no, don't go because I'm going to change. I'm going to go and do these meetings. And you see it's in the movies and shit. That shit saves people. You know what I mean? And I would kind of keep them around. It was almost like bait. I was baiting them to stay, and then, you know what I mean? I get another paycheck and right out the door with that next paycheck. And it was just one nonstop fucking revolving door of lies. But yeah, take the leap of faith, man. What do you have to lose? What, one night out of the trap house where you're going to go and be vulnerable and fucking take a risk? And if you hate it and you don't get any kind of guaranteed progress, that you like, it's rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So if you do the steps, but you do them half-assed and then you don't recover, you can't say the steps didn't work because you didn't fucking do them. You didn't do them 100%. You got to give your all on this shit because it is life and death. And maybe not death in a physical sense, but continuing to live that life is nonstop spiritual death. You can die 1,000,000 times spiritually, and that fucking blows, dude. You can only die once physically, but you can die so many times emotionally and spiritually. But that just goes to show you that no matter how many times you die spiritually, you still get another fucking shot. So you can still, if you're still alive and breathing and walking and talking, you can still get this recovery. But you gotta want it, man. And it's fucking scary, but just stop being a bitch and do it.
Beautiful. You can't slam the mic drop. Another air mic drop from Andy, people.
Why do you have to comment on every dumb thing that I do and I don't want people to see?
The wrap shit up. I remember, I mean, it takes a lot of courage. It takes bravery. It takes courage. It takes a lot of guts, whatever you want to call it. And I remember a dude said to me, I mentioned to him, I was working in a restaurant at the time, and I mentioned about learning how to cry again as a man, and, you know, doing all these things and be vulnerable. And I remember he jokingly was like, but kind of seriously was like, oh, you sissy, you know, basically said that to me. And I remember looking at it, I was like, bro, I'll tell you right now, it took a lot more courage, a lot more bravery. It was much more difficult to get to a point where I could feel pain and feel sorrow and cry and weep and feel all these emotions that most people don't want to feel. It took so much more courage to do that than to ever just stuff it down and be angry. I mean, so much more. It's so much more difficult to do that. And
absolutely it does.
It makes us fearful to want to do it. But that's, at the same time, that's the only key to, you know, to freedom, if you will.
It is. I mean, it takes a real man to face all these things. I had a sponsor back out in...
Or a woman, too.
Or a woman, I'm sorry. Well, I'm a man, so I'm just... Yes. You know what I mean. But I had a sponsor years ago out in Vancouver, Bruce, and he was a rad dude, and he was always trying to, like, get me to crack, you know what I mean? Because I'm always just, like, this tough guy shit, like, coming fresh off the streets, like, fucking, I don't budge, no emotions, fuck that, like, I'm hard, like, you know what I mean? And somehow crying came up or whatever. I was like, dude, I haven't cried since I was a kid, man. What the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, no, I get it. Like, boys don't cry, right? And I was like, yeah, exactly. He's like, yeah, but men do. And I was like,
nice.
It was cheesy to me at the time, but I mean, looking back, like, I get it. Because, yes, it takes a man to acknowledge that we do have the emotions. And sometimes, like, dude, I cry at movies. You know what I mean? And I used to try to hide it. But it's like, and I'm not saying I'm going to sit there like an idiot bawling my eyes out in a movie theater or whatever, but it's okay. It not only is it okay, but it's amazing to have access to those emotions. And if you see something beautiful,
it's a tool.
Then it's good to have that emotional reaction to it. You know what I mean? Like, you see somebody like a newborn baby, you know what I mean? Like, I always used to like say that I hated kids, and on whatever reason, they never did anything to me. But now when I see a baby, because I'm opening up emotionally, I get excited, man. You know what I mean? On Friday at my home group or whatever, there was a guy there, had a brand new three months old, man, right out the package. And this kid was fucking adorable. And we locked eyes. These crispy blue eyes, most beautiful little girl. And we locked eyes. I almost started crying because this kid smiled at me.
That's awesome.
It's like, you know, like a baby is so authentic and honest. You know what I mean? They don't know social cues and social, like, you know, pleasantries or whatever. So this kid smiled at me and it made me feel so good because I didn't do anything to win this kid over. It was just an unconditional love and acceptance from this innocent little baby. I don't know how I'm going off on this tangent, but it's like, it's good to have the access to these emotions and whatnot. Cause you're right. When you numb the bad ones, you numb the good ones too, you know, and it takes a lot.
So be vulnerable.
Yeah. Stop being a bitch and be fucking vulnerable.
Man up.
Yeah.
Woman up.
Yeah. Man the fuck up and get honest with yourself and get honest with somebody else.
It's the most beautiful thing.
It is beautiful.
And if you truly want to live, and again, we go past addicts, just addiction in this podcast a lot. I mean, this goes for anybody. Just have the courage to just try it, and magic will happen. So,
yeah, man.
All right, another successful podcast, my friend.
Hell yeah.
And thanks for listening, everybody. Subscribe on YouTube, please. Room 9 podcast, and we appreciate everybody's support and your ears and everything else that comes along with the central nervous system and the connection of this audible,
what the fuck,
wonderful story. So we love you guys. Later.